When a couple comes to me and says that they're engaged and they're going to be married, I say congratulations. And if they ask me to perform the wedding and if I'm able to do that, I typically sit down with them for a couple of hours before the wedding sometime, not in one session, but in a couple of different sessions, 5 or 6 or 7 sessions. And we review what the Bible says about marriage and about men and women and relationships and communication and intimacy and money and worship and all these different things. And I also give them some practical advice along the way, just things that I've heard or things that I've experienced that I feel are pretty good for couples to hold on to as they're planning for their wedding. And one of the pieces of practical advice I give them is about the week leading up to their wedding. I tell them, don't be surprised if the week leading up to your wedding is absolutely crazy and you feel like you're going to lose your mind. Because there are so many details that typically have to wait till that last week before the wedding takes place. And some things that maybe you forgot about and now you're trying to play catch up, and just a lot of things that need to fall into place. It can be insane, it can be chaotic, your time is limited, and you might lose your mind. But I say, don't worry, for 2 reasons. One, it happens to almost everybody, so it's a common experience. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're broken or that you're messing up. It just means you're human. and you have limited capacity on what you're able to accomplish. And secondly, the second reason I tell them not to worry about it is because of the day of the wedding. I say, once you get to the day of the wedding and you get to the ceremony and you're there and the person you're going to marry is there and there's someone who's going to legally marry you, it just kind of sinks into your heart that, well, you will, by the end of the day, you will have accomplished the one thing that you wanted to accomplish. You will have arrived at the place that you wanted to arrive at. And then, of course, that'll be just the beginning of living in that reality. And you know what you won't be thinking about during the ceremony, during the reception, any of those things? You won't be thinking about the craziness of the last week. You won't. You'll just be enjoying the moment. I'm telling you that because of something that David writes in Psalm 27. In verse 3, he describes some difficult circumstances. He says, though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then will I be confident. So 2 circumstances there. First of all, an army has besieged him, which means he's not surrounded by any friends. He's alone and he's in danger. And secondly, if a war has broken out against him, that speaks to the circumstances of his life, saying that they're about as difficult as can be. Every area of his life was a battlefield. And I don't know where you are in regard to those 2 categories, relationships and circumstances. I know for some, Christmas is hard every year because some of those things have been missing for a while, or maybe they were never present in the first place. For some of you, I bet Christmas is newly difficult this year because some of those things are more of a battlefield than a place where you're feeling any peace. And for others, to varying degrees, you take even just the holidays out of it, you take Christmas out of it, and life's been hard. Relationships hurt, or good relationships you used to have, they're gone. And circumstances, I mean, that's every category of your life, and to get all of them lining up in just the way that you'd like them to be, that's pretty rare. If you're there right now, or if you anticipate that you might be there someday, where things are hard, relationships, circumstances, then it's important to remember what David said in the very next verse. In the very next verse, after he describes about the worst possible scenario in a person's life, he says, one thing I ask of the Lord, this is what I seek. And do you know what that one thing was? As long as he had that one thing, he was going to be okay. As long as he had that one thing, he was going to be courageous. His heart was going to be encouraged. He was going to keep going. And what was the one thing? The one thing he wished for is the same exact thing that Jesus was born to give you, and that Jesus has already gifted to you by his death and resurrection. One thing I ask of the Lord, this is what I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The house of the Lord forever, for eternity, how the Bible describes that. That's a place where you're never surrounded by a single enemy. You're only surrounded by friends, including face-to-face with the best friend of all. The way the Bible describes it, there are no battlefields in your life anymore. Nothing that hurts. All the hurts have been healed. You're feeling peace and joy to the highest degrees. And you might also know how the Bible describes our eternity with Jesus, what it compares it to. It compares it to a wedding. A wonderful wedding. It compares it to a wedding. And when you get to that wedding, you know what you probably won't be thinking about? You won't be thinking about all the craziness here on earth that made life so hard sometimes. You won't be thinking about the things that were missing, or difficult, or painful. It won't be that they wouldn't have happened. They really did happen. But when you get there, you won't be thinking about them, because you'll be enjoying something so much better. And that's not to say that, oh, you're just supposed to feel like life is good. It's not to say that if life is hard right now, you're just supposed to suck it up and smile all the time and say, oh, well. No, God's heart goes out to you when you're hurt. His stomach starts churning too with compassion when he sees you going through anything difficult. And why he allows the difficult things for as long as he does are questions, we don't have definitive answers to. But in the manger and at the cross, we see the heart of God for you. And as you go through anything that you're going through, you do have the right to remember that the wedding is coming. Your place is already reserved, and you're not just a guest. You're the bride. The bride of Christ. That's how the Bible describes it. Just know that that's coming. One day you'll be there. And it'll be far better than anything I can describe. Rest well tonight, my friends.